Well, we just need to wait until we are live. We just need to wait until we have truly, kick the arse out of this podcast, and then we make another one, another
I
one,
know, Sam.
until one of them gets listeners, and then we will.
So before we jump in, I want to, because that's interesting. We were never going to run out of movies, Sam, never ever. Because the reason we did this movie, or the reason I suggested we did this movie, is because we wanted to do American Pie. And I was like, what other movies came out in 1999 that actually are on streaming for free? And it's a big list. It's a long list of movies. I was like, oh yeah, maybe that, maybe that, maybe that, maybe that, maybe
Give
that.
us some of the list. Tell us.
I'm not prepared for that, Sam.
Oh, well, fucking, this is terrible.
The Mummy was 99, wasn't it?
The Mummy was 99. Have we done The Mummy?
We should do it because it's coming off Amazon Prime.
We haven't done
in
The
the next 30
Mummy.
days. I know.
Oh, well, I actually cancelled my Amazon Prime subscription. So
Really? Wow. So you're
times are tough.
all out on the podcast.
Times are tough. So that $7.99 is in fact, the reason is that it's an experiment to see how much I actually, because we do use Amazon quite. I kind of feel a bit bad about that. But what I noticed when I was looking on Amazon the other day for a backpack was that you can get it delivered for free to the shop, which is 5 minutes away in my village.
Yeah.
For free. And I think, well, that's as good as I will just drive to. Usually it's a pain in the ass, waiting around. I would just drive and pick it up whenever I want. That's actually more convenient and it's free. So why do I need Amazon Prime for?
Do you know what? I haven't really used Prime for like Prime delivery in years. I think actually the offering on Prime Video is decent. Like,
it's all right.
I know you're doing a face. I know you're doing a face.
It's that one movie that you can't find anywhere else. But other than that, I didn't see anything good on there. No value.
It's a better platform. I think generally it's better offering than maybe Now TV. I mean, I know you've got Sky, so it's not quite the same.
Well, it's exactly the same service, though. And I mean, the app.
Yeah, but you don't pay for the payments aren't the same.
Oh yes, no, I don't pay for it.
Yeah, so you get Sky as well, whereas I just pay for the Now TV streaming app,
which is quite expensive now, isn't it?
It's fucking horrible. It's like a tenner for the movies a month, and then it's like £6 for the entertainment or £7.
I thought it was even more. I thought it was a tenner for entertainment now. Maybe you're grandfathered into some.
Maybe.
Honestly,
it's £4 for the kids, and there's Hulu on there as well, which is another fucking fuck you, pay me channel.
Entertainment and cinema offer usually $19.98, now $14.99 for 6 months.
Oh,
TV
I'm
membership.
paying more for it than I thought.
TV membership is entertainment auto renews at $9.99. Now TV Boost auto renews at £5 a month. What the fuck's Now TV Boost? Boost in full HD, ad-free streaming. So you're getting ads on top of.
Oh, I must be paying for that then, because I don't get ads.
Yeah, cinema is £10 and then another £5 if you want to skip ads.
Yeah.
God damn, that is ridiculously expensive.
We are past the golden age of streaming. Where,
we really are. Cancel that shit,
it's as bad as cable TV.
Cancel that shit. Do not be paying
stuff on it.
No, but it's not nothing. No.
Ultimately, Sam, I get what you mean. But I don't have a wife or kids, so this is my this is what I spend my money on. Is I want all the streaming TV at all times.
Just saying how much you're using it. Cancel it. Recharge, cancel it for.
It's not just me using it. We do use all the streaming services. Like I said, Netflix is the one we use the least.
Why do you think I cancelled Prime?
Yeah,
because that's the one that nobody else has, and I share Netflix and Disney with about 40 people. Please don't take me down. So it's like a real.
Even Netflix is like fucking £16 now because I share it with 5 or 6 people who've never given me a penny. Your names will appear at the end of this video, by the way.
On a screen, scrolling.
They're like patrons, but the opposite. Like they get a free thing from me for nothing.
I'm gonna do it. Here we go. Give us the names. People who are
Ross Griffith.
Any more? Keep going. Joe on there.
No, Joe's not on that. Although Joe does
brothers,
use
sisters.
my brothers and sisters, Harry and Rebecca use it. Does Rebecca use it? It's hard to know. My mother uses it. Joe has my Now TV, to be fair. He sponges off that. And my Paramount Plus, which I'm definitely cancelling as soon as I've watched Star Trek.
For the audio listeners, we have it's quite an attractive little moving banner. TV freeloaders. Joe Stellers, Rod Griffiths, Emma, Tim, Harry, Rebecca, Mother. You have been called out.
You've been shamed on this. But none of you fucking watch my podcast or listen to it. So
on my ticket with our ticker technology. Look at this.
I know. I like this. I like this. I feel like next time Ross is on, we should just have it like just insults, just exactly like across the bottom of the screen, and wait till he notices.
Oh, that's quite fun. I do actually like it. We should use this more. What are we talking this week? What are we talking this week?
Election
from 1999.
Well, let me do the intro, Sam. We could jump in. Let's talk about this movie. So, regular listeners know I do a patented cough, clears my throat, prepares me very nicely for doing the podcast.
They follow along. Our hordes of listeners.
Damages Sam's eardrums every single week. In 10 years, he's going to be quite deaf. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Imaginary Movie Podcast, a podcast now in video form, where we watch a movie and then we talk about it. My name's David, and while it's very hot, I feel like the line for too hot to do a podcast is probably higher than 24 degrees or 21 degrees or whatever it is at the minute here.
That's a very specific slight to somebody.
Oh, sorry. It's 20 degrees where I am.
It's 20 degrees, yeah. That is a very specific slight to somebody. I'm not exactly sure who you could possibly be talking about, considering.
Well,
no, it's Ross. It's Ross because Ross isn't here.
The listeners won't know who I'm talking about because he's been absent for like 5 of the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, the Irish guy who used to be on our podcast. Hello, my name's Sam, and if you died right now, Dave, I would throw myself into one of my dad's cement trucks and get poured into your tomb.
Wow, that guy must really love me.
Yeah, I think that's a strong sentence. I think it's
fair. I think it's fair. I think it's fair, given who I am. You know, that's fair. And I'm definitely being buried under 8 feet of concrete for other reasons, unrelated.
Possibly related to being the undead, but that's something for another episode of this fantastic and continuously successful podcast with hordes of aforementioned listeners. Today we watched Election, 1999. Both of us never seen this before?
Oh no, I've seen this several times. I
really?
Where I watched. I went on a.
And you've been holding out on me for all of these years. You haven't been hounding me as I hound you with every single film that you haven't watched.
I haven't been hounding you, Sam, but this is definitely a David starts watching at 11:30 at night, and you both go to sleep and wake up to like 40 messages recently incoherent from me as I watch a movie well into the depth of the night.
Yeah,
I've done it in a while actually.
Yeah, I was about to search for Election in our WhatsApp group, but considering the shit show that has been the last 5 or 6 years, I don't think we're going to I don't think we'll be able to pin it down.
Common, yeah. It's all just us talking about how much we love elections, and we won't get into the other political statements we make. But this is a great movie. We did vaguely talk about doing Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is, as we discussed, there are only 3 good Matthew Broderick films. I mean, if anyone out there disagrees, fight me. Wargaming from the 80s. Wargaming, I think.
It's absolutely War Games. Move on.
Whatever. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is his most iconic film, and I think this is probably his best film. I think, having watched Ferris Bueller as well, I think this is a stronger movie.
Yes, well, that's a good point, because I think this podcast, in opposition to our other task, which is to watch every single Nick Cage movie, I think, and just marvel at the brilliance of the Cage Meister.
Cage Meister.
It's dropping that in there quietly. The thing that I think we're doing with Matthew Broderick is just trying to understand how this man has a career, because in almost every other movie that we've encountered him in, in life, he's an absolute just trash fire of no acting ability whatsoever. I mean Godzilla's the one we've done for this,
He
and that is
sleepwalks through that movie.
that is a performance in that movie that I do not understand how somebody didn't pull him aside and say, Matthew, look, I know I really like you. You're a great guy. I need you to emote.
It's not you, it's me.
I need you to bring
Get off my film set.
Yeah, I need you to bring just a shred of actual human being emotion to this scene. Could you do that for me? Could you do that? Because he's shit. He's just. I don't get it. But this and Ferris Bueller, and I think there's another one which I haven't seen. The one with Brando, which I'm the Freshman.
I didn't know Broderick had appeared in a Brando flick.
Yeah, the Freshman.
Is it Fat Brando?
It's 1990s Brando, so yeah,
Fat Brando. Yeah.
So I think this is
fine. He's not. Marlon Brando's estate isn't coming after us, I'm sure.
Yeah, this is one that I think is another of the kind of the films that explain Matthew Broderick, and that was obviously earlier than Election.
Well,
so my point is,
quickly, Sam.
Go on.
Well, you know how obviously you can't succeed unless you're born to success. I think both of Matthew Broderick's parents were actors. I could be wrong on that one, so maybe do a bit of fact checking. But I'm fairly sure both of his parents were actors. He's married to an actor,
playwright, actress, and painter, and James Broderick, who was Doug Lawrence in the television series Family, which ran from 1976 to 1980.
So it helps to have connections, and obviously, and I think Ferris Bueller being such an iconic role, I think War Games is a better movie, and this is a better movie as well. Yeah. But Ferris Bueller being such it really kind of is a very well cemented part of that kind of like John Hughesy 80s teen movie kind of like surge that we get. It's one of my parents' favorite movies because it came out when they were sort of in their late teens, I think.
Yeah, the other one is Glory, 89.
I haven't seen that.
That's a good film, actually. It is good. Probably. I'm not sure how. Like, it's maybe aged a bit, just in the way that it's shot, very 90s. But he's not really as central. There's other people going on. Denzel Washington's in that as well. But anyway, let's cut the Matthew Broderick hate for a minute, and let's talk about him in this movie. Now we're doing that as a I think a prologue to the better actor in this film, who we'll come to in a minute.
Chris Klein.
Chris Klein learning to act by himself. But actually, no, I think he's good in this. And I think it's because in the same way that War Games, he's a bit more innocent, but Ferris Bueller, he's smarmier. He's actually got. I almost think of like a self-awareness. The actor, the character knows he's in the movie.
Yeah, and that's led to all the fan theories about Ferris Bueller, where like that are somewhat engaging. Where the idea is that Cameron is like that Ferris Bueller is an imaginary friend, basically, that he doesn't exist, and it's like the only reason that works is because he is so unreal. Whereas in this movie, I think Broderick is like bringing a performance that we haven't really seen from him in the other movies we've talked about, where I wouldn't say he's particularly like, in bits he's acting like a human being would act, and in bits he isn't, but he's quite despicable in a lot of ways.
Yes. Yeah, and
which I always like in a movie.
He's not trying to be, the fucking human plank of wood that he is in Godzilla, for example, which I know is not held up, but for me, that's one of the films that's just like, wow, this is just unbelievable. It's unbelievable levels of terrible acting. He is trying. He isn't a kind of likable protagonist in a lot of ways. And actually, I'm not sure this film actually has like a proper protagonist, because all the way through, you're not really. Everyone's kind of a dickhead, and everyone's battling each other, and there isn't really a way out in terms of the good guy prevails, which we can come to. So yes, weird one. It's a weird one for Broderick in that I'm like, wow, actually, I enjoyed that. Like, well done. You did really well. But let's just move on and let's just focus on the fucking powerhouse that is Chris Klein. No, Reese Witherspoon, who is just like, she's 22 in this film. She's very, very, she's pretty early on in her career. And fucking hell, like, if I was executive, I'd be going, where the shit did you find this woman? And we are going to make so much money from her because she's just electric. She's 22. She's playing as a 17, 18-year-old or whatever it is. And she's given an enormous amount to do. She has to really push, she has to be so aggressive and so like in your face and dominate a scene, put all of that. And I was just blown away. And it's sometimes in the when you're looking back and you look at the filmography of some people and you go, I don't like, why is she such a big star? Legally Blonde 8, like, why is that? And you actually have to go back to their earlier performances to see what everyone else saw in '99 and went, yes, absolutely, let's give her lots of movies because she is so good in this.
She's great, and I don't think we make a bit of fun of Chris Klein because, I mean, name a really great Chris Klein performance.
There's this one and the exact same character that he played in American Pie. That's what.
There's American Pie, and he was in Just Friends, and he's quite funny in that. But like, he was the douchebag who's paramedic. Anyway,
oh yeah,
but like he's fine in a lot of things, but he's not. And this is his first role. But the reason that this film works, I think, is because it's really grounded. It's like it's a teen movie, but this came out the same year as American Pie. So you've got Jason Bigg, and Chris Klein, obviously. And Jason Bigg is fucking a pie and committing sex crimes and all of this other horrible shit that happens in that movie. And then you've got this movie, which is about electing a class president, which is the lowest stakes voting that could possibly exist. Except, of course, all the first past the post voting that goes on in this country. Unless you live in North Yorkshire. But it's like the lowest stakes thing. And but the way that the film makes it work is it's this wonderful satire of like the systems in place and of these this could quite easily be like a bitchy kind of like Mean Girls film, and it shies away from the high school bits of that. Like it exists, but we get a really small cast of characters coming together to do this ridiculous farce of an election, where the whole film swings on the fact that Matthew Broderick is a piece of shit who hates this teenage girl because she's ambitious. And therefore that the whole film like spins on that. Matthew Broderick doesn't convince Chris Klein to run in this election. The film doesn't exist, and it's wonderful for that.
Yeah, and it's that small story, isn't it, that actually ends up. It's a great political film, and the novel by Tom Perrotta, like, it's obviously aping quite a lot. I think it was the whole thing's a reference to Ross Perot in the late 90s.
Yeah, and I think the guy wrote it about the 92 election.
Yeah, and then there was a real school election where a pregnant girl was elected class president or prom queen or whatever it was. And the school burned like votes. So this pregnant, and you think, wow, that's just amazing. That's an amazingly, who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck? And 90s America did. That's who. That's who
90s America now, us, everyone. But the important thing is that every character in this movie is a piece of shit in some regard, and I think we really should dig deep into that in a minute. But in a believable way, in a way that maybe like, a movie about assassins, you're like, well, I don't really believe anyone's going to kill people. That it's all kind of stretches the bounds of credibility. Whereas this, I really believe that every single person I've ever met is capable of this kind of pettiness, this kind of nasty, petty behavior, this passive aggressive, putting on a brave face. I just think that, and it's really, really easy to hate someone who's like Reese Witherspoon in this movie, who's perky and successful and it's really hard. It's really easy to dislike someone like that, and it captures that very well.
Let's dig into the fact that there are no like positive characters. I guess maybe Chris Klein's character is trying, like but then even
I feel
though
like Matthew Broderick's wife didn't do anything wrong. I feel
Yes.
like she got a really raw deal in this.
In terms of the main ones, you've Broderick, Reese Witherspoon, the
Klein
sister,
and Tammy, the sister,
that comes out of nowhere as well, and like that's all really fun. Like it's a great almost like anti-hero black comedy kind of feel, and I just love that. I love films that explore that and kind of like trust their audience a little bit, trust their audience that they don't have to have Tom Hanks, coming in and being like the nice guy who's gonna I can relate to him because he doesn't punch children.
You don't have to have movie archetypes in this film, and you don't.
No.
Although interestingly, Matthew Broderick is kind of playing the Ed Rooney role in this movie, which is a fun sort of reversal from Ferris Bueller.
Yes, yeah.
He's playing like the shitty administrator who's desperate to like bring this kid down and peg, and that must be intentional in a certain respect. I can't help but think they maybe thought they wanted Broderick because they couldn't have the guy who played Rooney because he's a sex offender.
The self-awareness is, again, this is a self-aware movie. That brings us, I think, to my favorite thing about this film, which is that it's a movie that knows it's a movie. And that, I think, is like, it's quite a rare thing because usually you get films where the camera is a passive, lens. It's there to merely capture what is happening in a room or, Avengers fighting or whatever it is. And I love films that really use the camera, use the editing, use what's on screen to kind of like add to the storytelling. So at the very start of this movie, we get an amazing, complex sequence where there's pauses and there's freeze frames, and then each character is explaining, like, and it's quite long as well. It's a good few minutes long, and they're all explaining, and it kind of pauses on Reese Witherspoon's face while she's explaining what the difference between morals and ethics is. And then we get the entire background, the entire backstory, and then it comes back to it for a second, and she says like 2 syllables, and then it pauses, and Broderick says, "Oh, another thing," and we go back again.
Yeah,
and this happens from different points of view, different characters, and that I think is just so fun to watch. It's so fun to watch.
It's what would later evolve into kind of the mockumentary format in a movie. And we get The Office and things later on that kind of brought it to TV. And this isn't quite that. But have you seen the film Drop Dead Gorgeous?
No.
Which is also from 1999 when all the movies were made. But that's very similar of like, we have these kind of like these talking heads with every character, because it's more of like it's more of a documentary thing, but you get all the characters telling you about themselves, telling you their side of the story.
Yeah.
And it kind of like, it's a cheat. In some movies it would make it weaker. But in this, especially, I think the first backstory we get is from Broderick, and it's kind of a bombshell of like, I fucking hate this girl. I hate her. Do you know why I hate her? Because my friend statutory raped her, and then he lost his job. And then he's like, and I know that's wrong, but I don't like her. She wasn't punished. And I'm like, punished? She's a child.
I know. And that's like,
skip over that somewhat.
Well, but I think it's not condoning that, is it? But what it is doing, it's giving us like the stakes. It's giving us like the texture of the film. It's giving us that little hint. Last week we watched Gremlins, and there was that bit in the movie, because I remember this because I was listening to this podcast just a few moments ago, and it was the bit where the woman says, "I'm gonna put that dog in a tumble dryer," and all the dads who'd brought their 6-year-old was like, "What the fuck? You're gonna do what?" Because it's a hint of what this movie is coming up, and this movie is very much like, I mean, they say, the guy says, "You wouldn't believe how where," and you think, "What the fuck?" Matthew Broderick, I thought this was a jovial family jaunt that we were going to get into.
The actual line, and it honestly, like, and I've seen this movie before, but I'd forgotten it was coming.
Say it.
Broderick's no. Broderick says, he says, and there's one thing about Tracy Flick that everyone needs to know, right? And it pans to his friend saying, and he goes, "She's got the juiciest vagina I've ever seen," and it's like, and he's like, "No, not that." I just think that is a really brave thing to put, like you said, in the first fucking like 10 minutes of your movie, and you're like,
"Well, movie,
whoa,
you have my attention."
Like, oh, we're doing something, are we?
And that creativity in the filmmaking is not something we see enough. An example that comes to mind, The Big Short by Adam McKay. We did Don't Look Up as well, and that has elements of it, but I think The Big Short is probably the best example, where you've got like, we're going to pause, and yeah, and now Margot Robbie in the bath is going to explain to you the financial 2008's financial crisis, and you're like, well, again, movie. You have my attention. I'm watching Margot Robbie in the bath. Explain this to me.
And it's the perfect, like, loads of films I think try this, but it becomes a spoof, and the movie becomes about that. You know, like in the way that Family Guy initially had all those cutaway gags.
Yes.
And then Family Guy became about, you know, it's a 20-minute episode, and fucking 18 minutes of that are going to be cutaway gags.
And then the chicken and Peter are fighting for 7 minutes, and you're like,
exactly.
What the
and like,
are we doing?
It's one of these things where it's funny. It's sometimes it's funny on the face of it, but eventually you're like, right, like, tell me a story, get on with it.
And you set me up perfectly there, Dave, because that is the other part of this movie that I just adore, is that actually, despite the zaniness of the filmmaking, despite the zaniness of the presentation, as we've said, this is all fairly believable. Like, we don't get any points where you think, wow, that's really, really out there. Everyone's acting in a very human way, and the film pretty much there isn't a zaniness. Now, what I was expecting, because it's a huge trope from the
Were you expecting the Mean Girls moment where Regina gets hit by the bus?
Well, yeah, exactly. But that's an even better example than mine, because yes, in Mean Girls, and you're like, what the content of the movie doesn't change. The presentation does, and the presentation heightens everything up, and you get that zaniness. But the principal, I thought the principal was going to be, you know, like, he was going to be a lot more of that brash, old school, you know, like
police captain.
Exactly. And the movie's like, no, he's going to do a very rational thing, which is, I'm going to suspend this girl for 3 days because she's like insubordinate. That's about as wild as he gets. That's about as wild as he gets, because everyone else is saying, you know, and even when Matthew Broderick's found out, and we don't get the dressing down. Again, great filmmaking. We cut the scene. We don't need to see it. All we see is the aftermath of his saying, and then I tendered my resignation. And you're like,
we see,
oh, well done, film. Well done for making
early
the right
on
choices.
When he's firing the friend who was having sex with Tracy Flick. Like, he's still quite calm, and he's like, Did you have sexual contact with this girl?
Did you cross
because he's like, did he cross the line with this girl? And it's like, yes, because he's doing his job and he needs to know. And like, again, everything's so grounded. Nobody gets hit by a bus. No one's murdered in this movie, and it could flip on a dime. By the way, like at any point,
I was waiting for it. Exactly, I was, and I was almost going, please, no, please, just keep this as, yes, it's, you know, it's still a bit out there in terms of, just keep this about the core content of the story, which is,
like you said though, Sam, the filmmaking is wacky, and the filmmaking in terms of, like, we get some speech bubbles later and some like graphics instead of actual film, and some silliness there and more freeze framing, and it's and that's where the zaniness comes from, and that's where this movie's a bit like weird.
Like Broderick, when Broderick's having sex with his wife, and he's imagining the neighbor, and then he's imagining the 16-year-old girl, you know,
shouting at him, telling him off. It's great.
Fuck me, Mister. And you're like, fucking Jesus! Like, this is, again, that's the presentation. It's not the content of the film. It doesn't change.
On the face of it, it's actually quite a not boring, but it's a very run-of-the-mill plot. Is that this girl's running for high school president? Broderick suggests someone else runs. We get a third candidate, and then he rigs the election, and that's kind of it. Oh, and Reese Witherspoon rips those posters down, but that's kind of it. Like that's the movie.
Yeah.
Oh, and then he has an affair, which is again just like perfectly folded into this.
Look at this pathetic white man who's just gonna ruin his life for.
He does have a whole box of pornography.
Yeah.
I feel like it must have
it's
been
19. Although even 99, like you could, yeah.
But it's a whole box of VHS pornography.
Let's talk about what this film is suggesting about these characters, though, because there's a lot of subtext that's going on. The box of pornography, the fact that he starts off, and he's kind of like, yeah, my life's great, and you think as soon as a film says that, you're like, well, this guy is unhappy. He's if anyone says they have a great life in minute 3, it's all going to go to shit. And then he's got this absolutely pathetic car, this little tiny car that he ends up sleeping in later on.
It's the sort of thing that over here you drive when you're 17 and you can't afford anything else.
Yeah, 17 or 70. There is no in between. Yeah, there is no in between. Later on,
or if you're a teacher in a criminally underfunded education system in an allegedly first world country.
I love the scene later on where he after is it. I can't remember exactly when it is. Sorry, but after he basically, you see him in the sports car, and all his hair slicks back, and he's got a suit on, and it's like, so you're seeing actually what this guy wants to live like, but his reality is very mundane. He's teaching in the school. He's doing the same thing over legislative, judicial, executive, legislative, judicial, executive,
like, year after year.
The same thing over and over again. And so when you think about this guy's motivation, he wants to live a little, doesn't he? That's his thing, and he's sick of his loving plain wife, and he wants to live dangerously like his mate Dave, who
but he doesn't want to admit that to himself, so he transfers it into hating this teenage girl. Because he wishes, not necessarily that he wishes he was having sex with a high school student. I don't think the movie ever says that. But what it's saying is he is jealous of his mates, like putting himself out there and taking a risk. Exactly. Yeah. And like, oh yeah, a bit exciting and a bit fun.
And then Flick, and then Reese Witherspoon's character. Again, it's all done very, very subtly in that, like, why is she wound up like this? Why is she so obsessed about being the best, and she's lonely because she has to, she has to kind of sacrifice friends to be successful. And we get a couple of little hints that her mother, who works, she's a paralegal. Did you know? Like,
the biggest law firm.
Yeah. Her success, like her mother's obviously the driving, and we get like 1 or 2 mentions. I think when she fails to win the election, we get that thing of like.
I believe there were some cutscenes. I was reading up on the trivia on this, and there were some cutscenes basically where it's shown that they're quite poor, and that she was raised just by her mother, and there's no father in the picture, so the mother's like pushed her to. And it kind of, but you don't need it, but like that's interesting to know, and it may be.
I love that little line when she's explaining her relationship with the teacher, and she's like, it's not a I didn't have a dad, but it's not a daddy thing. He just made me feel safe and protected, and look after me. It's like, this is fucking genius. That's genius. But we do get one reference to the mom who's after she's failed. She says, maybe if you listen to me, and in terms of my corrections,
that's abusive relationship. If somebody takes your failure and tells you, maybe you should do what I said, that's an abusive relationship.
Yeah, this sounds like our relationship, to be honest, Dave. So maybe that's a little bit too close to the bone there, but
what?
That's a terrible point.
I shouldn't berate you all the time. How would you then become better at being my friend?
That's a good point. I'm not sure. Tell me how. And then later on with Chris Klein's character, we get this little tiny reference when he's having a conversation with to Tammy. That he's like, I just want you to know that I'm still your brother. Look, just because I know you're adopted. and you're like, oh, the film just goes clunk into place, and everything makes sense between Tammy and her parents. She was adopted. She's not like the others, and she feels an outsider, and she wants to get out of this
Yeah.
this like
And it's the sort of
heteronormative
situation
life
where
that she's set up for.
she obviously feels like Chris Klein is throwing that in her face, even while he's saying it to be like, no, listen, it's not that.
Yeah,
If
even
anyone
though
ever
you're
says that, it's
adopted.
definitely that. If anyone
Yeah.
says it's not A, but it's always A. To me, that's shorthand.
And that, I think, is another example. Those three things are another example of giving us motivation for the character, which is so important and so many films fail to do, but also doing it in a way that is pretty subtle. Like, it's not, I'm not saying it's super coded and you have to, but it's enough that they drop it in there, they move on, but they give you those little pieces.
It's
And
show,
it's,
don't tell.
yes, but it's also show, don't tell, often after you've been shown something. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, you're going, why is Tammy such a bitch? Like, why is she out to destroy her brother? He's done nothing wrong. Yes, her friend slept with him or gave him a completely unexpected blowjob, which is well, there we go.
Good for you, Chris Klein.
so there's all these things that run through it, and I love that. I love that, and it's so surprising as well. It's so surprising for a movie to not be spoon feeding you all the time.
Yeah. And I think for me the best thing about it is it's not black and white. Like Broderick's character is fairly detestable, but again, like we've all hated someone like this, and we've all been like, if you could a rival or someone you just particularly dislike, and you're telling yourself you don't hate people, listener. You do. Everyone hates people. Maybe it's me. Who knows? Maybe I need to be taken down a peg. But there's something in his like.
If you think Dave needs to be taken down a peg, go to patreon.com and put the highest tier, $500 a month, and I will personally drive to Yorkshire and slap him in the face and put it on YouTube, and he'll let me because he'll be getting $250. Right?
I'm happy with that. I am that cheap. But it's kind of like the mundane pettiness where no one's trying to kill anyone, and like he's not trying to have Tracy Flick expelled. He just wants her to, like, he's rabid to have her suspended about these posters or like reprimanded, but he doesn't want to ruin her life. He just wants her. Do you know what I mean? He just wants to. It's petty revenge. And she, for her part, doesn't seem to have anything be out to hurt anybody until she's like, well, this guy fucked with my shit.
Yeah.
And even Tammy isn't really out to like destroy her brother like she just wants to take something away from him that he's got because he's taken something away from her that she had in her eyes. And it's like, so while there's no protagonist to this movie in that way, there's also no antagonist in that way. Like there's very little verses. It all goes on behind scenes. It's actually just a testament to the writing of this script and the plotting. Well, there's
go on.
No, I was finished basically.
No, well, I think you're right because it kind of there's enough going on, isn't there? There's enough going on for us to kind of understand all of this and to be able to bring it all together in a way that is enough. There's enough movie there without really adding on anything else. All the presentational stuff that we talked about. And then as the plot progresses, it becomes a bit more heated and people are doing things for different reasons. I mean, like when Broderick, says, and he's helping this woman out, going to try on lipstick and all this other stuff. All right, and then
it's his friend's ex-wife. Isn't it? He's like going around and doing like the things that only a man can do. He's opening all the jars and he's fixing
using
all the taps
drills.
Using drills. He's doing man things, guys. It's 1999, so I couldn't possibly fix a tap because I'm a woman.
and then, hey, we should get a room in that motel. And she's like, that's not funny. And you think, okay, well, that's it. It's killed dead. And then she becomes, she's weak because she's vulnerable and all these other things. And it's
kind of I want to stop you just about that line because that's a perfect example of this isn't Matthew Broderick instigating an affair. He's making a joke because he thinks, because he's such a dull individual, he thinks that, oh, that's a motel, we should get a room. He thinks that's a funny thing to say.
Yeah.
When she responds with, no, we shouldn't. That's when I'm like, say, maybe we should get a room.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, I think that's why Broderick in this film is actually acting as opposed to Godzilla where he's sleepwalking and things. Because he sells that perfectly of like, he's not saying we should get a room. I'll see how this woman responds. Maybe she'll be up for an affair. It's not until after that point that he starts thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is very nuanced for like a quite silly movie about a high school election.
It is. And that's what I think all the way through is just the general joy. The joy and surprise that I take from this film. Like that is a thing, you know, when Reese Witherspoon is ripping down the posters, she's just losing her shit. And it's just so enjoyable to watch. It's all, you know, all these individual things just add up to this experience of just
lying on the floor, just ripping posters up. Yeah,
just have it. And I'm enjoying every single second of this movie. Now, let's talk about things we don't like. Let's try and find something here because we have gushed about this in the way that when we hate a movie, we try and find things that we do like because, you know, let's be a little bit self-reflective.
I do think that this being a 1999 movie, Tammy's character being a lesbian is maybe played more for laughs than actually being introspective. I think that's just a certain, not laughs as such, but certainly the Catholic girls' school thing is a bit, how do we write this woman out of this movie? Because she promises to, the reason she's suspended is because she gets up and promises to like dissolve student government if she gets elected, and all the students are like, yeah, government sucks, and I'm like, yes, hopefully you'll still be thinking that in 20 years and you're still poor.
Yeah,
just like we are. But like I do think it's maybe a bit reductive on the like you said, in the that gender normative way, where it's not really an issue of her being afraid. Anyway, maybe it could be approached in a way that would be a bit more inclusive, perhaps. I'm mangling this, but you know what I mean.
No, I think that's a completely fair point, and it's something actually that, yeah, it's 1999, but also, you know, it's 2022 now, so let's fucking talk about it. Let's mention that, and I think it's definitely, and I'm sure other podcasts will be able to dive into that a little bit more. So, good point. The thing that I don't like about, although the thing that I'm trying to be, you know, empathetic in terms of,
I have no idea what you're going to say here.
People might not like. Wait for it. It's a fucking great point. I'm going to build it up even more. No, it's at the end of the movie. The film a little bit just goes, well, meh. That's the end. You know, Broderick, like, he gets his nice new life in New York, and he sees Tammy and throws the milkshake, and nothing happens really. No one really.
Do you not think...
Hold on, let me just hold on, because again, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit here. Is that we have all of this, like all of this stuff, all of this movement, energy, and it's dynamic, and things are flying all over the screen, and characters are, you know, doing interesting things, and then at the end of the film, it all just kind of wraps up with everyone's pretty much fine. Like no one has any real negative repercussions. Tammy has a great time in Catholic girls' school, you know, smoking spliffs and having loads of sex with a new girlfriend. Chris Klein's football dude, and he's
also having loads of sex, seemingly. Yeah,
brilliant. Reese Witherspoon is working for the Republicans, of course, and then he's having a great time in the Natural History Museum. You know, like he's got a new girl, and I just think sometimes you kind of want, like, that where I thought this movie was going to go is that either they were going to reach a point where they kind of sort it out, or they do something. And apparently there was an alternative ending to that effect, where I think he signs her yearbook at the end, which is probably not good. Or he just goes deeper and deeper into make him pay for his actions and really just crush him. Like that's kind of what I was expecting.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I will say, I mean, we'll talk through this through because I think there's a lot of interesting stuff about the ending. Because I do agree, I think it's the weakest part of the movie. I wasn't massively bothered by it, but it definitely is. Now, I do think that. Did you not think the New York thing? And he's like, "Oh, my apartment's a bit smaller." Do you not think it's kind of it's a repetition of his speech from the beginning of the movie about his life in fucking wherever this Minnesota, wherever in Minnesota this
Omaha,
was.
yeah.
Omaha. Like it's a repetition of that, and the fact that he has that thing with the kid with his hand up and he's asking the question, and you're like, this guy's still miserable because his life is very similar, but the movie is kind of coded to tell you that he hates Tracy Flick because he's not happy. And, you know, obviously we talked about the various reasons for that. So the ending of the movie, him having this shitbox apartment, which is a great, American movies are full of this. It's a great New York joke, I'm sure. It's only $1,500 fucking twice
hell,
that, 3 times that now.
10 times that.
Yeah. And he's working at the Natural History Museum and he goes in and he sees the kid and he's like, fucking hate this kid. And you're like, so actually, he's just as miserable as he was before. I maybe would have liked a bit more comeuppance for him. Not comeuppance, but certainly like a Frank Grimes type moment. I want the end of the movie is he gets fired. You see him like picking his clothes up off the lawn in front of his house and loading them into his car with a voiceover saying, "So that's me. I'm just gonna go somewhere."
Drive off.
Because people are throwing rubbish at him in the street, and like he can't. His wife's chucked him out, and she's divorced him, and he's got this shit car, and that's it. The book ending is odd. The book ending is that, which I haven't read by the way, is that he's working as a used car salesman in town, which maybe makes me think that like the social kind of you're a scumbag is less. And like you say, he signs her yearbook and they make it up, and I'm like, I think that would have been worse. Definitely would have been worse.
Much worse.
And I think this is better, but I think like there's another point. Like this is the middle point, and you could have gone further and had this guy's life been destroyed, or he's working in a restaurant as a waiter. That would make me think, well, he suffered enough.
Well, I mean, Dave, not you. He's, we see him for one scene, putting the tickets, the price tickets on cans of.
Yeah, Reese Witherspoon says, "I hope he's doing well."
I hope he's doing well. It's like, and
maybe he's finished his novel. That would have been a great opportunity for a Starbucks joke if it was made now. By the way,
yeah. It is a real like. I think you're right that this is the kind of like third way, isn't it, of this movie? And maybe again, I'm not sure I necessarily agree with the point that I said. I just think I think it's fair to say that the movie maybe just ever so slightly pulls its punch on the ending, and actually crushing him would have been funnier. It would have been funnier, and it really would have topped this off as a proper black comedy, dark humor. To have him just utterly destroyed. And
but do you not think that this is much more in line with the rest of the movie, though, in terms of like no one's really the bad guy, so no one really goes to prison for 40 years,
Yes, yeah.
Like probably. No one's crime was that bad. He lost his job because it's like that police officer who stole those Jaffa cakes. Like ultimately, when you're in a position of authority, if you violate that, if you abuse that authority, you should lose your job, regardless of the job and regardless of the infraction, because that's just, do you know what I mean? So as a teacher, like rigging in this election is like, well, you can never teach again because obviously you have abused that trust, and so like it makes sense that he can't be a teacher anymore, but it doesn't make sense that his life is ruined. Admittedly, he did have an affair and everything, but like it doesn't make sense that this guy's like shooting himself under the bridge.
Yeah, he did directly blame Flick for his mate losing his job and say, you basically let him on. Type of thing. So there's some weird like there. So again, I don't know. I don't know where I sit. I did feel at the end. I felt at the end a closure and a point of like, well, there we go. He's running off into the park. He's still pathetic. And maybe that's enough. Yeah. Maybe that's enough just for him to be a pathetic loser who's throwing milkshakes.
I don't think his evil's merited like a big hammer of punishment. You know, he's not should be
Yeah.
breaking rocks in a prison, making wallets or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? It kind of plays into the fact that, like I said before, the movie is incredibly grounded and low stakes, but you forget about it because the movie brings you in. And for these people, the stakes aren't low, even though they literally are. But for them, they're not, and that's kind of, I think that's a real triumph of movie making.
Hmm.
Is to kind of like make your brain forget that this is the least consequential thing that's ever happened to anyone ever. There's no mention of grades. Tammy gets expelled, but because she wants to be expelled,
Yeah.
and like, you know, so there's no stakes for anyone. Chris Klein's character, he can't play sports, so this is just something for him to do. He doesn't desperately want to be president. He doesn't need to, so his parents won't send him to military school. Like, there's no stakes for anyone, and the movie making you forget that, I think, is chef's kiss.
Yeah. I think it's an absolute classic, isn't it? It's an absolute classic of a movie.
That you
in a
never
way
ever
that,
hear anyone talk about.
yeah, and that is a bizarre
Apparently,
thing.
this is an amazing piece of trivia, which apparently has been corroborated more than once. Apparently, this is Barack Obama's favorite political movie,
Wow.
and he said that in interviews twice.
I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense because it maybe gets to the human element of politics, doesn't it? Is that actually, like, you know, people have political differences, and that's fine and good, and that's what we want in a democracy, in theory. But actually, you would also just want to crush. You just also want to win. Like, you know, when you want, you know, Barack
And there's no
Obama and
point
stuff
voting
like
for a
that.
third party. All the lessons are there, Sam.
Yeah, like I remember a point after Trump was elected and Obama was being interviewed, and he basically said, you know, of Hillary, well, I think I would have won. Like, I think I would have done it. Like, he was an incredibly competitive person, and I think he had to really like he always talks about how his wife, you know, Michelle Obama, was always like, why are you doing this? Why are you putting our family through this? We've got a great life. We're fucking lawyers. We're rich as shit. Like, why do you have to go to the top? What is it that? And I think it must be that thing of just, I need to win. I
think you have that or you don't you?
Exactly.
Boris Johnson in this country as well. Like, he was making loads of money being the mayor of London and writing his column. And why would you want to get down and dirty with the MPs? And you are right, but I think some people have that fucking tick in their brain that means they have to win. I would say all lawyers and solicitors, in my experience, have that little tick, but all barristers, judges, anyone, most politicians have that little thing in their brain from childhood or whatever that says, I must win. My self-worth is intimately tied to me winning everything. And Tracy Flick in this movie is exactly that.
Yeah. And that's, I think, and then the opposing side, Broderick, is the opposite, where he's like, I just need to crush her. I just need to crush this teenage girl, like, for no reason. I mean, obviously, like, she quote unquote caused his friend to lose his job, but really it becomes irrational because, you know, like when he commits the crime of throwing those 2 votes away, the biggest thing is her face. It was her face. In the freeze frame of her.
He wasn't going to do it. He wasn't going to do it
until he saw her face.
Oh, and she's spying. And it validates his opinion that she's an asshole and that she needs to be punished. And this like karmic thing that he has in his head, which we all secretly do when we judge people who are doing things. This karmic thing in his head where he says, you know, like when I was saying the other day about that person who was driving, pulled out on me in traffic. And I was like, I wish I could just had a magic thing where I could give people who irritate me diarrhea, because ultimately I also want to punish people who've wronged me, even if it's just pulling out on me in traffic. And we all do that. And I think that's why Matthew Broderick's character in this movie speaks to me. You know, not that I necessarily want to go out and like make teenagers cry, but if they've wronged me, maybe I would.
Yeah, this way, officer. And all of that, and let's wrap up soon, but all of that is kind of represented visually in the film as well. Like Broderick's hate and his downfall is represented wonderfully by this bee sting.
Yeah.
and his face swelling up, and that is all of this again. Let's go back to the presentation. Like we understand what's happening, and then the film shows us what's happening by having his eye just ballooning out of him, and all of that is like there's all this texture going on. So it's not just what the characters are doing; it's what the film is showing us, and also we then just get this just great detail that runs through the movie at all points. And it's very difficult, I think, to find a film. I was thinking back of all the films that we've done. There's very few, I think, that reach this level of just real fucking clever filmmaking. Really, really.
It's clever, but without maybe reaching that like Christopher Nolan cleverness, where you have to really sit and fucking like in a quiet room for an hour after watching it just to understand what's happened.
7 times I've watched Interstellar.
Rather than clever, happens. I would say this is sharp. It's a really sharp movie.
Very good.
It's really well made. It knows what it wants to say and it says it. Like I said, this isn't a world-ending apocalypse movie. It's not even Mean Girls where people are getting hit by buses and we have a happy ending at the end. Like this is a movie kind of highlighting the seedy underbelly of every single normal person's personality, and that people can be two things. Matthew Broderick counts. He's actually a really good teacher. He just hates this girl, and he can be both. He can be both of these things, and he can be an adulterer, and he can love his wife. He can be both things, and it's kind of like quite singular in that way. And also, like you said, Sam, this is a movie for people who like movies because it knows it's a movie. It's technically very impressive. It's well written, and I think all the performances in it are excellent.
Yeah, and
go on. I was going to say there's a real Fargo vibe in this. I don't know if you noticed. There's a real like Midwestern. That's why I said Minnesota earlier, because it's that real like thick accent that a lot of the characters are doing.
It reminds me of that film about what's it about? You recommended it to me.
Some information.
You recommended it to me, and it's got like a carnival float at the end, and it'll come back to me. Probably several hours after this podcast has been recorded.
Is that on Drop Dead Gorgeous, where the carnival float sets on fire at the end?
Oh, yes, I have seen that then. Yes, I have. Yes.
It's the Miss America pageant thing.
Yes, I have seen Drop Dead Gorgeous.
I've already called that parallel, Sam, if it helps. So it's good that you're retreading the ground I've tread.
It is good because my brain is now making that connection. We're on the same page. Just several minutes afterwards.
Yeah.
The final one for me is that you think you nailed it there, where it's like everyone thinks like this. We suppress it, and we don't just I don't randomly hate everyone, but sometimes you just think, oh, fuck, Jesus, a fucking pain in the ass. And it's that thing in films and all storytelling. It's like it's got this little grain of truth, doesn't it, that runs through this movie, and it's not over-egged, it's not over-exaggerated. The presentation does that, but really, this film stays pretty truthful, I think, to a universal human experience of like, you're just a fucking dickhead. I just don't like you, and I'm gonna, not go as far as Broderick's character does, but actually, you kind of empathize with him, as well as thinking, well, that's a bit too much. But she's annoying.
It's perfectly normal to be full of bile. Ultimately, what he does is really shitty, but he throws 2 votes in the bin. Like, it's not some grand plot. He doesn't spend the whole movie like with a chalkboard plotting like fucking cutting holes in the floor so that she falls into a trap on things.
Yeah.
He just makes an instant snap judgment based on the fact that he really dislikes this person. And I think there's a bit in everyone's brain that's just full of hatred and bile, and it sometimes swims to the surface and makes you think, I should just run this person off the road. That would make them feel bad about pulling out on me. And it passes, and you think, I'm a good person, I'm not going to do that. But for an instant, you're like, you wish you were the sort of person who would just do that. And certainly there are people who just act on their instincts, and most of them are in prison for horrible crimes. But it's there in everyone. And anyone who says otherwise is a liar.
Absolutely. Good film. Well done, movie. You did it. Let's talk about which 1999 movie we're going to watch next week. Then, because we've already mentioned The Mummy, which is I don't know if that's streaming. Is that on Disney Plus? Surely.
It's on
surely.
Prime, as I said earlier.
Oh, it's on
but
It's on
if you're-
Prime, right? So that or Drop. We could do Drop Dead Gorgeous, which is also
We've already
99,
done 10 Things I Hate About You.
right. That's on Disney Plus. Or throwing it out there, as we've already mentioned it, and we've never done it. What about The Big Short, which is on Disney Plus, and we could
1999.
no, it's 2015, but as a
Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me.
oh dear me, Jesus.
I'm not sure.
Talking of a film that has absolutely no subtlety whatsoever, that would be a good.
Bicentennial Man, 99.
Are these all streaming?
No, I've no idea.
Oh
This is,
Jesus!
fairly,
if you're gonna throw
Sam, I
Adam
can't do
Sandler
everything at
movie-
once. I don't think there's a website that will tell me what films are streaming in the UK that were also released in 1999.
surely you
now.
could- Big Daddy 1999 is on Netflix.
Shit, Dogmo's from 1999, Sam. We've done so many 99 movies lately.
It's a great year. In fact,
Great
I'm
year.
sure there's 1999 for movies must be. It must be.
Fight
the
Club is
peak.
a 99 movie. I don't think we've done that yet, though.
Notable
Galaxy
films.
Quest, we've talked about doing. That's 99.
Wow. Are these all is Galaxy Quest streaming? Anyway, this isn't This isn't an interesting conversation for anyone other than us. If you're listening to this, you'll know within a week of what we watch next, and it'll probably be in several weeks from the point that we recorded as well, because that's how the internet works.
It is how the internet works. Yeah, I could go all night. The Matrix, we did that. Anyway, there's loads of films from 1999. We'll talk.
You
on
can
our
also
next
Google
1999
things.
Our next 1999 podcast, because there's a good reason why there are so many movies we remember fondly from 99, and probably I would make a guess, like probably a high point for theatrically released movies. And no, it's got nothing to do with Y2K. But tune in next time, and we'll tell you all about it.
It's 9/11. It's to do with 9/11.
We're 2 years out from 9/11, Sam. It's definitely not that.
No, it's pre 9/11. That's the point. Oh, keep up, Dave.
What about the year 2000, Sam? Why wouldn't there be more movies in the year 2000? If the archives were destroyed by the planes, a third plane, a fourth plane, I can forget how many planes, a fourth plane hit the archives somewhere, and all the
beams.
films were lost.
Jet fuel.
Steel beams, jet fuel. Oh, we're on so many lists, Sam. I wonder if that's still a thing. Anyway, tune into Sam's new podcast where he tangentially relates everything to 9/11.
Live from the caves of Afghanistan.
News just in. U.S. forces have killed Taliban leader Sam Jordan in a drone strike. Got that?
Well, I think that's funny. We'll go with that.
That's funny.
Happy to be compared to the Taliban.
Tally my banana, right?